let's dive into this here, buddy. And I do want to start out with Laiatu Latu. Was originally going to start with Anthony Richardson as always, but let's switch it up on the fly here. Let's talk about Laiatu Latu, Drake, because he is really standing out in camp. And immediately it's that explosiveness that comes to mind when you watch these guys and do throughout the drills. We saw for the first time in training camp the one-on-one battles from training camp between the offensive line and the defensive line. Laiatu Latu's just explosiveness and his get off the snap are rival to anybody on the Colts defensive line right now. He went out there. He's been able to win at times against Blake Freeland over on that right side, but then also against Bernhard Raimann. And guys, Bernhard Raimann, it's not like he's taken a step back. He looks every bit of what he did last year and looks to be improved again on last year. And Laiatu Latu has been giving Bernhard Raimann some fits at times throughout training camp. And one other thing, Drake, Latu, since Ebukam went down, has been spending a considerable amount of time with the ones in that starting defense. So this is really encouraging to see out of the number 15 overall pick.
Yeah, and especially after, like we mentioned, that Ebukam injury, because you're talking about a guy who had a high position of importance, especially with the defensive front. And so to take your number 15 overall pick that you're hoping is going to be the guy at the end of the day, and you got to say, okay, we were planning on putting you in there quite a bit initially, but now we really need you to step up like on a leadership level. And he's already doing it. Hell yeah, man. That's exactly what you want to see, especially when it's a defensive edge and nobody was expecting that at the time, and he's already starting to pan out. So it's great to see. It's also good that the Colts addressed some of this depth early before this kind of thing happens so that now you're not fumbling around, because the options are really slim at defensive end. I think a lot of people initially were like, just go sign a free agent. It's like, oh, no, there's nobody even close to probably like Tyquan Lewis that's out on the the edge rusher market right now. So yeah, it's exciting to see Latu already blossoming with Charlie Partridge, and maybe that's already showing out too, as the impact of a new coach like him.
Well, I think we've talked about this, coming into the season and coming into training camp, that we didn't expect the transition from college to the pros to be as great as it has been for some of the Colts pass rushers. For Laiatu Latu, just because, for the simple fact, that he is polished, just how polished he is coming out. He's one of the most technically sound pass rushers and potentially the most technically sound pass rusher in this draft. He comes out of UCLA with not just one move that he does really well, but he has one move plus multiple counter moves that he does really well. And here's the thing, when you're in college and you're going up against all different types of competition, some guys that are going to play in the NFL, other guys not so much, you can really rely on your athleticism. And if you have one really good move, you can keep going back to it over and over and over again. That's not the case when you reach the NFL. You can use that move maybe once or twice, but once you do that, then those offensive tackles, they're in the NFL too. They get paychecks as well. They know that you're going to continue to go back to that move, and it's not going to work more than a couple of times. So you need to have those counters. And like Latu even spoke to this when he was drafted. Drake, if you remember, he said, I'm always trying to think of making sure that I'm going out there and I don't have to think, that my counters are just natural to me. So because if I'm trying to rush the passer and I'm thinking, I'm not going to be able to get there. It's going to slow me down. So being able to just have those counters in his pass rushing repertoire, and to be able to go to them kind of second nature, I think that's what we're really seeing out of Laiatu Latu that really makes him such a dynamic pass rusher, and why he's getting off to such a fast start here in training camp. And we're only to the first practice of training camp was literally a week ago today. We're only a week into training camp, and you're already seeing Laiatu Latu out there making plays against the first team offense.
I remember vividly talking about Laiatu Latu briefly when we were, pre-draft, and we were like, he's the most pro-ready guy. Mm-hmm. He's the most hit the ground running, can start right away. can be a guy that literally could get 10 sacks in his rookie season. Okay, he is that guy. But man, those injury concerns, that was us. And the Colts were like, yeah, no, it's good. So, I mean, it's awesome that all of that analysis is now kind of just being transitioned over to the fact that he's a Colt. So I love that he's almost got a veteran mind, varying the attack. A rookie mistake is what you just mentioned, is if all of a sudden that's not winning, or week 5 comes along, and 4 games in a row you're without a sack. That's because the tape has piled up on you. That's because teams have caught on to what you're doing. You keep flowing through your moves like that, it's very difficult to get a beat on you. And just to end with this, go listen to Dwight Freeney talk to, I think it was Steve Weish, I believe it was. I can't remember who asked him what he thinks about Laiatu Latu, but it's an interesting answer. He says you don't know when you're going to blossom in the NFL, but what's important is that you keep going and that you vary your attack. And he kind of discussed just having a variety of ways to beat really good tackles. So he's going to be a force. And I just think right now you're expecting, at least a pretty high floor.
Oh yeah, definitely a high floor. I think that maybe he doesn't have the ceiling of a Dallas Turner, but I mean, his Laiatu Latu ceiling is still pretty damn high. I think if he hits it, you're looking at a guy that is a perennial double-digit sack guy, and could even be, one of the guys that gets the most sacks towards the top of sacks and pressures in the entire NFL.
Yeah, and real quick, when have the Colts had a pass rusher that's had 10 plus sacks back-to-back years, 2 out of 3 years? It's been so long.
It's been a while. It really has. And here's the thing too. You mentioned Dwight Freeney. I love you're mentioning Dwight Freeney. He's going into the Hall of Fame this weekend. Dwight Freeney was one of those guys that came out of the draft, was taken. I think he was taken 14th or 11th overall in the 2002 draft by the Colts. In his rookie year, Dwight Freeney had 13 sacks, 9 forced fumbles, and 20 tackles for loss. Unbelievable numbers. He certainly didn't have a problem transitioning to the NFL, and the Colts are hoping that Laiatu Latu doesn't have a problem as well. Scott Hacker asked, do you guys know what happened with Dayo Odeyingbo? Dayo Odeyingbo is currently dealing with a calf strain. That's why he hasn't been out there. He's been on the sidelines. It's nothing too serious, but again, we're early in training camp. There's no reason really to push it. Our good buddy Luke Veerkamp, it was great seeing you at camp, my guy, asking any roosters around. No, there are no roosters around. If you guys watch our sister podcast, Locked On Colts, Jake Arthur was definitely dealing with a rooster that crashed the party. Absolutely hilarious clip. If you haven't, go check out the latest episode of Locked On Colts. Fantastic there. But Drake, let's switch gears, and now it is time to talk about Anthony Richardson. And since we talked to you guys on Monday, there hasn't really been too much of a change. I mean, Anthony Richardson is still off to a very good start in training camp. I've got the numbers here. Overall, in team sessions, he is 29 of 41. That's 71% completion percentage, 3 touchdowns, and the lone interception by Julian Blackmon. But something that continues to be a priority for the Colts in these practices, especially with the passing game, it's it's that deep ball. Have continually placing a priority on the deep ball and really trying to stretch the defense. That's what we've been seeing throughout. We've seen deep balls to Michael Pittman, to Josh Downs. Alec Pierce has gotten involved in 11-on-11 sessions, which we'll talk about Alec Pierce today as well. But it's not just 29 completions on dink and dunk throws, Drake. Anthony Richardson is really trying to test this defense and stretch the defense, trying to find his limits. And I think that's a good thing for right now in camp, is you don't want to just take these dink and dunks so that way when we do get to the regular season, all of a sudden Anthony Richardson is being asked to make these plays down the field. You don't have that chemistry with your receivers on those specific plays. Now is the time to build that chemistry. And so while he only has a 71% completion percentage in camp, some may say that's low. To me, I think that's pretty good considering he hasn't played football in 9 months. A lot of those are deep shots as well. They're not dink and dunk throws. So if it was dink and dunk throws, his completion percentage would be even higher, in my opinion. But Anthony Richardson really distributing the ball to all parts of the field. And I think that makes for a really, really complete training camp and will allow Anthony Richardson, when we get to week one, to get off to a pretty quick start.
Yeah, and look, the importance of the deep balls, gonna be paramount for this offense because you didn't see it with Gardner Minshew, and it really allowed defenses to hone in and realize, hey, it's either going to be a run or a short pass, more than likely. So I think the fact that you got to look at a defense, they get hit with a couple deep shots like what AR can do, and the rest of this offense can do. It really makes you tentative to do anything else because then you're like, well, we can't give up much more than that. That was a 50-yard touchdown. So it opens up everybody else's really opportunities. So I think that it's encouraging. Plus 71% is fantastic. Okay. You're talking about a guy who is a run by every nature, looks like a run first quarterback, but is playing with the efficiency of a guy who has all of the traits to be a passer. All right. So I think that it's encouraging. He's not turning the ball over. He's not missing consistently easy throws. You're not seeing a lot of balls sail, a lot of balls get dirt. He looks like he should, which guess what, people, is a franchise quarterback. He should look like a franchise quarterback. Right now in training camp, he looks like one that only played 4 games last year, that's had a long way to go to get here in recovery, but looks great. And there's really no indication that he's not going to keep looking good.
Well, I think this is an indication of what we're going to see in the regular season too.
Yeah.
I mean, because and what I mean by that is this offense is going to look, in my opinion, I think it's going to look a lot different than it did a year ago. Not only just because of when Gardner Minshew was in, but I think it's going to look different than when Anthony Richardson was in last year. And here's why. Because number one, he's not a rookie anymore. Yes, he only has 4 games under his belt, but he has mastered this offense. There's no more learning the offense, learning the system, getting comfortable in it, because even while he wasn't playing, he was still learning and getting those mental reps. So, and we've seen him be able to take those mental reps that he learned last year and already translate it onto the practice field. He really hasn't taken a step back or shown that he needs extra time to process it. He's going very, very quickly, and he knows where to go with the football. But so I think that's priority. No, I think that's not priority, but I think that's number one. This offense is going to look different. It's not going to be a lot of as many short throws. It's going to be incorporated in. It's not going to be like all verts every single time, but this offense is going to be more vertical. Stats Matt saying seem to be taking a ton of vertical shots, and they really have been. This offense is going to be more vertical. It's going to be more explosive, more aggressive because you have Anthony Richardson back there. And I also think it's Shane Steichen preparing Anthony Richardson for some of the defenses that he's going to see this year because of Jonathan Taylor being in the backfield with Anthony Richardson. It's going to give the Colts more opportunities to take those shots if the defense is playing closer to the line of scrimmage to combat Taylor and Richardson running the football. You're going to get more opportunities down the field. So I think it's a combination of those things, but either way, I think this is good for Anthony Richardson. The more shots you take, the more practice reps doing it, it's good for Richardson to get used to that. It builds chemistry with the wide receivers, and it also gets the wide receivers kind of used to what you need to do playing the football in the air when that ball's coming from number 5 as well.
Well, yeah, and the rest of Steichen's offense, especially the RPO game, going back to it, you hit a vertical shot, and it opens up a whole bunch of, a whole can of worms for the defense to deal with the RPO game from that point on. So I think that what you're seeing is kind of what he wanted to do last season all year, and that is just kind of integrate Richardson more and more as the year goes on and take more and more of those vertical shots to be explosive, so it allows more things to happen underneath. So it's exciting, man, and it's really good that he's like you said, getting this out of the way, because you can work on dink and dunks and easy throws all day.
And one of those wide receivers that figures to be a big part of the deep vertical passing game for the Colts is Alec Pierce. We've talked a lot, including on this show, about Adonai Mitchell and how he's getting a lot of reps with the first team offense. But guys, don't forget about Alec Pierce. I don't want us to make it seem like Alec Pierce it's a foregone conclusion. He's going to be wide receiver 4, whatever you call it, a backup wide receiver, the backup X, because Alec Pierce still has a role on this team. And he's getting just about the same amount of first team reps as Adonai Mitchell as well. And we saw on Tuesday, or what is today? Thursday. It was Wednesday's practice that we saw Alec Pierce really get involved and be honestly, he's been more impactful in the 11-on-11 sessions than Adonai Mitchell has. Alec Pierce, he's really beginning to make big time plays in training camp. He caught a really long touchdown throw from Joe Flacco, who may be close to 40 years old, but he can still sling the pill, where Alec Pierce kind of had to adjust in midair to catch the football, and he came down with it. It was about a 45-yard gain. There was another one that was going to be from Anthony Richardson as well, but Alec Pierce is getting free deep down the field. Kind of what we saw last year with Gardner Minshew at quarterback. Gardner Minshew just didn't uncork it and launch the football and give Alec Pierce really a chance down the field. But Anthony Richardson is giving Alec Pierce a chance throughout training camp. And on the last throw, Pierce did fall awkwardly on his shoulder. He did slam his helmet and kind of came out of practice, did not return. Haven't heard anything about that as far as the seriousness of that injury, but Pierce didn't leave practice. He was still standing around with his fellow wide receivers and talking to them, and there weren't any trainers around him. So it just seems like it seems like it's not too serious. We'll know tomorrow when the Colts get back on the field, obviously, if Alec Pierce is practicing or not. But Drake, I think it's just good to see Alec Pierce starting to make these plays and starting to be more involved, especially in these 11-on-11 sessions where, I mean, if he doesn't show up, it could be a really quickly how he ends up back as a more of a role player or kind of a backup role at that wide receiver spot. But the easiest way to make it hard for the coaches to sit him and not play them is to continue to make big plays in practice.
Yeah, and that slamming of the helmet could have been any number of things. I mean, remember, people, football is an emotional game, all right? You're running full-grown athletes into other full-grown athletes, professional athletes. So I also think that it is encouraging to see him making these plays, because make no mistake, yes, he even if he falls to wide receiver 4, he's going to have a role on the team, okay? But now he's got a fire lit under his ass to do something, because that is a hell of a prospect in Adonai Mitchell. They spent a second-round pick on him happily, okay? So I think that you're going to get the best Alec Pierce you've seen, plus another season with the same coach and the same quarterback in theory. That's going to probably help him as well as it will help everyone else, even Michael Pittman Jr.
Exactly. Noah, our good buddy here at Horseshoe Huddle, good to see you, my friend, asking, is Pierce separating better than last year, or are all the highlights so far contested catches? To me, most of them have been contested catches. I really haven't seen too big of a difference as far as the separation that Pierce has done while either watching practice or seeing kind of some highlights of practices. It hasn't been too much the separation, but it's just been, I mean, guess being more aggressive at those jump ball opportunities and really just getting more opportunities, because I think a lot of it, I mean, yes, the separation for Pierce is definitely something he needs to work on, and definitely not a strong point of his, where it is a strong point for Adonai Mitchell. But a lot of times if you throw that ball up to Pierce, I mean, he's a former volleyball player. He's very athletic. He goes up there and he gets the football. So I just think a lot of it needs to be opportunities. Now, you can't live and die by the jump ball, because it's not the most high percentage play you can have as in terms of a passing game. But and as Stats Matt kind of just read my mind, his footwork does seem a little bit better. So you have been hearing better footwork and more crisp route running from Alec Pierce. It hasn't translated into huge separation differences yet. That just could be because it is training camp and we're not actually seeing it in a real game. Haven't had a chance to really take a look at the practice film. Obviously, they don't release that, but I'm just happy to see that Alec Pierce is getting reps and getting opportunities. I think that's the biggest thing to really build his confidence. What do you think, Drake?
Yeah, I agree. And you even saw Jim Bob Cooter, I think it would have been yesterday. He's been praising Alec Pierce left and right, and his stock is trending upward in camp. So you've got yourself a veteran here who is walking into just year 3, and his job is already looking like it's on the line. But you guys got to remember here, okay, again, he's not a 5-star receiver like Michael Pittman Jr., okay, and he's not this precise tactician like Josh Downs, or this ridiculous high-level athlete, route runner, everything mixed into one receiver like A.D. Mitchell. I mean, if A.D. Mitchell hits, Andrew, holy crap. I mean, I think that was the 6th highest athletically tested wide receiver like since 1984, I think, by the RAS system. Okay, I mean, you're talking about a guy who's got star written all over him if it all works out. But look, Alec Pierce, he still has time, he still has a chance, and he's got an opportunity here to show the Colts that now I've got consistency, I can make things happen. So it'll be interesting, but I think that's going to be probably the camp battle I will have my eyes on the most.
And Drake, we cannot forget about the other rookie wide receiver that the Colts picked this year, and that's Anthony Gould. Because while Anthony Gould isn't really receiving first team reps, we didn't really expect Anthony Gould to be with the first team. He is showing out with the second team, and I think we're seeing Anthony Gould come into his role with this team, kind of the backup slot behind Josh Downs, and a kick and punt returner. And that's kind of what we thought he was going to be coming in, but he can also be used in the gadget role, because when he does get those reps with the first team offense, it's usually a lot of motion. You'll see Anthony Gould with that 4.3 speed. Steichen and the Colts are really moving him around a lot, and you're starting to see, as our own Zach Hicks wrote a piece on horseshoehuddle.com today about this, you're starting to see that deep threat ability really come out in Anthony Gould. He caught a couple long touchdowns, or would-be touchdowns, from Joe Flacco against the twos this week, and you're seeing that explosiveness really come into effect. You didn't see it too much in that first week, but it seems like Anthony Gould is adjusting and getting comfortable with this new team in this offense, and especially the last day or two, that's when you've really seen him make some pretty big plays with the second team offense.
Yeah, and that's really encouraging, because it's great to have more weapons, right? Especially when you've got a quarterback who you're trying to continue to develop, who really still doesn't have that many NFL snaps. So I think that it does kind of suck, because we had him on the show for Isaiah McKenzie, right? Because what Anthony Gould is what the Colts wanted Isaiah McKenzie to be. All right. They clearly wanted that, because they went and then drafted his replacement. So I think that you're going to see him obviously make most of his impact in the return game, but he's showing that he can be more than just a short little receiver that you put in the slot. This guy can make some serious plays. And, I'm really not that surprised. He's got returning prowess. Usually those guys are pretty athletic. Dallas Flowers, anybody, really fast, really twitchy. So that's exciting to hear. And I think he would fall into wide receiver 5. So if you can get that kind of explosion from that part of the depth chart, that's impressive.
Let's address some questions here in the chat before we move on to the defense. We've got Reserve Currency asking, who is taking the most reps at running back 2 and 3? For the most part, it's been Trey Sermon at number 2. Evan Hall's getting some 2 reps, but it's mostly been Trey Sermon. Evan Hall has a pretty good stranglehold on that number 3 spot as well. But as Yim asks, does anyone know how Evan Hall has been looking? He did get off to a slower start here at first, but yesterday he did break off, as Stats Matt is answering, he did break off a long touchdown versus the twos. So it doesn't seem like the explosiveness or anything has been hindered by that. Evan Hall has been a full participant in all practices, so he is healthy and good to go. But yeah, that running back competition, it looks like right now it's still Trey Sermon has a lock on that running back 2, kind of spelling Jonathan Taylor. Taylor, and then Hall is your pass catching back, your change of pace back for the Indianapolis Colts, which is I think what we kind of thought was going to happen.
Yeah, and hey, Evan Hall, I think, is already the best receiving back out of anybody on in the running back depth chart. So we'll see what his impact is going to be. But I think a lot of people are just overlooking Trey Sermon. I mean, I really do think he will be the running back too, and I think he is the closest thing that you're going to find to a Zach Moss replacement, which the Colts clearly, especially against the Browns, showed they can use both Taylor and a running back too.
Yes. And yes, stats, Matt. Taven Bryan was playing the nose tackle position during that run, but hey, Evan Hull still has to make the correct read and take it to the house. So we're gonna
savage observation.
We're gonna give him a little bit of credit for that. But let's turn to defense, Drake, and let's talk about the guy that outside of maybe Latu who's really stood out, and that is Julian Blackmon. We talked about him making that athletic interception of Anthony Richardson the other day, but he just continues to make plays. It seems like at least once a practice, we're talking about Julian Blackmon making a really nice pass breakup, whether it is in the middle of the field or it's on those deep shots that Richardson and the Colts offense keep taking. Now, Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen are very bullish on Julian Blackmon this year and believe he is going to have a huge season. And Drake, if this keeps up, I mean, Julian Blackmon has looked like one of the best defenders, not only in the secondary, but on the entire Colts team throughout training camp. And that's including DeForest Buckner, Kenny Moore, Zaire Franklin, Grover Stewart, all of those guys. Julian Blackmon is right up there with all of them, and he's been very impressive for the Colts, which is, with considering the safety spot on the other side, very much needed out of Julian Blackmon.
Yeah, and he pretty much already showed that last season in his role at strong safety, which, not to say he can't play free safety, but he just excelled even further, playing more in the box at times. So led the team in turnovers, still missed 2 games. I am so pumped to see what he can do, not only with a full season, but coming off of a year where nobody wanted him in the open market. And everyone was probably scared to death of his injury history. And the Colts were like, I can't remember what his contract is. I think it's like 3.5.
It's less than $4 million for this year.
Oh, for a guy that could lead your team in interceptions, that is dirt money. Okay, I think Joe Flacco is making more than Julian Blackmon. That's insane. So it's like you're talking about a guy that can make a serious difference for your defense. If he does, the Colts might actually give him that fat contract he's looking for.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, if Julian Blackmon is able to play all 17 games and continues to play at this high of a level, he's going to have another career year. He's going to be in line to cash in on that. But that's the thing, Drake. He's never played all 17 games in a season. Even when they were at 16 games, did not play all 16 games. So Julian Blackmon has to stay healthy. Otherwise it's all for naught. And I think that was one of the main reasons he didn't receive a bigger contract, is just because there are question marks about his health. But if he can put back-to-back seasons together, really strong seasons at that strong safety spot, instead of a 1-year deal with the Colts, it could be a multi-year deal with the Colts this upcoming spring. We had a couple more questions on the defense, so we'll take that real quick from Mr. The real Mr. Colt. We've heard a lot about how great Latu and Blackmon look, but what about Brent? Seems quiet on the Juju front. And honestly, I mean, Juju Brent, it's like he's just out there doing his job. And I think that's what you want to see. He's not giving up any huge plays, and kind of no news is good news out of Juju Brents, I think, because just getting those reps, staying healthy, that was one thing that I talked to him about on Saturday when I was down there at camp. What was one of his main goals, and it was just to stay healthy and get all the reps, and to go out there and really be competitive. So Juju Brents a lot. I think Brents gets a lot of bad reps because sometimes when the Colts do show highlights or there are highlight plays in camp, it's on Juju Brents, but he's in good coverage. He's in really, really good coverage. And I think it's only happened like once or twice, but that's what everyone always remembers. Otherwise, Juju Brents, he's maybe not having a standout camp, but he's out there doing his job and getting better. And I think that's what you want to see out of the second-year cornerback.
Yeah, with so many plays, man, people really do hang their hat on 1 or 2 or 3 videos. And because you can't put more in it. Typically, it's a collage of, just 3 or 4 videos, or it's just one video of one play, so you got to look at the grand scheme of things. And Juju Brents is not in the middle of a position battle, really. Okay. Like Dallas Flowers and Jalen Jones. So the attention of that's not on him. Okay. And then he's also not a prolific receiver like Josh Downs or AD Mitchell, the new shiny toy. This is a guy who's out there, like Andrew said, doing his job, playing zone, playing, right up in people's face, playing that physical style. Trust me, you'll see more of him and be talking about number 29 on Sundays pretty soon.
Right. And then one more here. Yim asks, do you think Ebekam's unfortunate injury could be a blessing in disguise for Laiatu Latu? And we think we talked about this a little bit on Monday, Drake, but with Ebekam not out there, it's going to kind of force the Colts to give the other guys more reps just naturally, because Ebekam was your starter. All those starting reps are up for grabs. So if I was in charge, if I was Charlie Partridge, I know they want to continue to rotate guys in. And I think that's a good plan. But you drafted this guy with the number 15th overall pick for a reason. You envision him being the future at that edge rushing position for you, and to go out there and rack up the sacks, rack up the pressure, and really be a dominant force against opposing quarterbacks. The only way he's going to do that is by getting more reps. So in my opinion, I would put Laiatu Latu out there. He's easily the best pass rusher the Colts have at the position. I would, as long as he continues this up throughout training camp, I would make Latu the starter week 1, give him all those Ebekam snaps, and you're out there having Latu play that 60-65% of the snaps, just like Kwity Paye. Let him learn, let him make his mistakes, but also let him get after the quarterback too, because I think his upside is just much higher than what you have with Dio Dangbo, Taekwon Lewis, or anyone else that is going to be fighting for that starting Leo spot.
Yeah, and you do have to look at the big picture here. Those other guys that Andrew just mentioned, for the most part, I mean, they're kind of veterans, or they're guys you don't expect to be starters. You know what I mean? So if you have an excuse, even if it's a dire one like this, right, you have to look at the situation and go, okay, this could be an opportunity for Latu to get even more exposure to, starting snaps. So I think Latu, I think you're going to see the most increased snaps out of him. But like Andrew said, Taekwon Lewis, Dio, those guys, once Dio becomes healthy, those guys will also get their chance. But also guys like Jannard Avery, Isaiah Land, they could potentially see a chance too. So this is a big injury, man. This was a guy who did a lot for the Colts.
And shout out to Yim. Thanks as always, guys. Have a great night. Yim, thank you for the super chat. And guys, we need more super chats, because Drake, he got this promotion, but that does not limit him from drinking. We got to get Drake. We got to get Drake some celebratory drinks. We got to get him a little bit liquored up here on the podcast.
With all this work, I've got to loosen up.
It's only right. It's only right. Yim, thank you so much for all of your support, brother. Really, really appreciate it. Drake, let's talk about the position battles here. We've already talked about some of them, so if we have covered them already, we'll kind of just go through them very, very quickly here. X wide receiver, like we said, Alec Pierce and Adonai Mitchell. Right now, it's about 50-50, splitting those reps at the X wide receiver spot. While they are splitting reps about 50-50, Alec Pierce has been more I would say more impactful in 11-on-11s. Adonai Mitchell has been more impactful, making more plays in one-on-ones. I think for a rookie, that's kind of what you normally see. The one-on-ones is where he's going to have those opportunities, and he's still kind of getting used to 11-on-11. Really, getting used to the defense, the physical play out there. So, but we're only 1 week into training camp. We got a long way to go. We're still over 35 days, I think 39 to 38 days until week 1 of the season. And even then, like we said, we're Adonai Mitchell or Alec Pierce. Neither one of these guys is going to go out there and get every single snap at the X wide receiver position. We may head into week 1 and they're still splitting at 50-50.
Yeah, you got to give both guys an opportunity still too, because like we mentioned earlier, Pierce is getting year 2 of Richardson and Steichen. You got to see if that's going to help him elevate to that, second round status that you spent on him. And then the thing with Mitchell is, he's this prospect that I might be one of the most. I think the best way to put it is he probably has the most potential of any wide receiving prospect I've seen them draft in some time. So I think that you got to get them both playing time, and I absolutely agree. Don't expect one of these guys to dominate the snaps over the other. I think by week 2, 3, 4, maybe you'll start to get more of an idea, but I bet right when they start the regular season, I would put my money down that, like you said, it's split.
Let's go to tight end here, Drake. Jelani Woods, Kylan Granson, Drew Ogletree, Mo Alley Cox. It's really been Kylan Granson. There really hasn't been any change. Kylan Granson is the move tight end. Drew Ogletree has been primarily the starter at the Y tight end, the inline, some rotating with Mo Alley Cox, but Jelani Woods, for all the talk about him coming in with a vengeance, ready to take over that tight end one spot, Jelani Woods has had a very quiet camp. I mean, he's starting to get more involved, especially down the seam. It seems like, again, that's his specialty, is those seam routes. But so far, it's no question. Kylan Granson is out snapping Jelani Woods with that first team offense, and it's not even close.
I think that we expected this to a degree, but also I'm just going to say it, for both of us. It looks a little bit like he's behind. It almost feels like he's behind. I can't really put context to that. It just doesn't, like, maybe on the field, maybe with the playbook. I don't know. It just seems like Kylan Granson is on the fast track to taking over at least the most snaps of all the tight ends.
And if none of these guys is able to separate themselves this year and really lock that down, I mean, we talked about Brock Bowers potentially in this draft being in the first round. Tight end in this next draft in the first round might be very realistic for the Indianapolis Colts.
Could be.
We already talked about running back 2. It's been Trey Sermon, pretty much Evan Hall here and there, but really it's Trey Sermon. Swing tackle. Now that Braden Smith is back in 11 on 11s, Braden Smith, they've been working him in kind of slowly back into a full participant in practice because of that knee surgery. Braden Smith now back with the starting group at right tackle. It has changed things a little bit. Blake Freeland has gone back to the second team right tackle, and while Jake Witt was the starter at left tackle, when Blake Freeland was the Jake Witt was the starter with the 2s at left tackle. I want to make that clear. But now, since Blake Freeland is back with the 2s at right tackle, they've moved Matt Gonzalez, from the right tackle with the 2s over to left tackle. So Braden Smith is back in the starting lineup. The 2s, it is now Gonzalez at left tackle, Blake Freeland at right tackle. Jake Witt is now the third team left tackle. So I would still say that Blake Freeland is probably leading that competition, Drake, just by a smidge. But right now, with Braden Smith back in the lineup, Gonzalez and Freeland are about 50-50.
Yeah, and the thing is, Freeland's got the experience. I think it's honestly prorated, his experience is, just because of how much he dealt with. But Gonzalez is the better prospect. And if the longer this battle continues, I'll put it this way, the more it's going to favor Matt Gonzalez. Okay, because like you said, don't be surprised if you see him make an impact as early as this season. So you don't know if one of those guys goes down by week 1. I would not even be shocked if Gonzalez is the guy who goes in before Freeland.
I will say that Gonzalez looks ahead of Tanner Bortolini. Tanner Bortolini has mostly been running with the third team offensive line, so that's definitely something to keep an eye on. Luke Veerkamp, we passed the tight ends, but I want to bring this up as well. If Woods wasn't like the most athletic tight end of all time, would he still be on the roster? Seems like they're holding on just for that potential. Certainly something to think about. I mean, and this coaching staff is still getting used to Jelani Woods. Because remember, that rookie year, it was the Jeff Saturday year. And then last year, Jelani Woods was really injured pretty much the entire season. So this coaching staff really hasn't been able to get their hands on him. So they're still learning Jelani Woods as well. And I think that plays a role into all of this too. Drake, now we move on to the defensive side of the ball. Talked about the Leo spot. Really, it's Laiatu Latu and Taekwon Lewis that are alternating. But I think the longer this goes, you're probably going to see Laiatu Latu kind of expand and really put some distance between the two there. Cornerback, Jalen Jones and Dallas Flowers. I think it's Jalen Jones. Dallas Flowers really hasn't pushed for that other outside cornerback spot yet. We've seen him rotate in here and there, but Jalen Jones has received the lion's share of the reps and really hasn't done anything as we get Noah Jaber with his eye comment because Jalen Jones truther out there. Love to see it. But yeah, Jalen Jones, I think, has a pretty good stranglehold on that starting cornerback spot as of right now.
Yeah, and he transitioned all those rookie reps into, keeping off Dallas Flowers, who is more athletic than he is, and probably better fit for receivers, outright speedsters than he is. But his technique's working, his positioning's working. He's also, like Juju Brent's, the physical type of corner. So it's awesome to see him as a 7th rounder just securing a starting corner spot. So we'll see, because obviously all of the criticism is going to be against him if he starts to slip just a little bit. But so far for the Colts, man, and Ron Miles, he looks fantastic.
Yeah, so far so good. It definitely
Yeah.
looks like Jalen Jones has taken another step up on this defense. But now, Drake, we get to the free safety competition. And guys, I'm not feeling any better about this free safety competition than I was a week ago between Nick Cross, Rodney Thomas II, and Ronnie Harrison Jr. Nick Cross is the one that's primarily running with the ones, but Ronnie Harrison is getting a good amount of first team reps. And then I would say Rodney Thomas II is probably third in that area. As StatsMat says, let's just skip free safety. No, we got to talk about it, buddy. But Drake, it's I would be lying if I said I wasn't very concerned about this now, because Nick Cross is not separating himself in the slightest. And Ronnie Harrison, you remember, he started out as a strong safety, not a free safety, a strong safety. And the Colts said, we'd sign you, we'll bring you in, we'll give you a contract, but you have to switch to linebacker. And now he's going from linebacker back to safety, but it's free safety, a position he hasn't played since his days at Alabama, where he was in college. That isn't good. This just isn't good. And I'm not sure what it is. I mean, unless the Colts are just continuing to wait to see if someone can separate. But after a week, Nick Cross really hasn't done anything to make me feel comfortable with this free safety spot heading into the regular season. And the longer this goes and the more drawn out it gets, the more it's just becoming those 3 dreaded words that I talked about last week: roster building malpractice on the part of the Colts.
Yeah, and I think that like you said, they're holding out hope that this trade up for Cross, this ridiculously fast, athletic, bulky, muscular, defender that hits hard, isn't a bust.
Mm-hmm.
You're holding out hope, because holy crap, you don't want a guy you traded up to get to be a bust ever. So I think that it is concerning, because you're talking about a guy who is going into year 3. You're talking about a guy who they're still kind of like got the leash on him, and the leash isn't long. And it's Rodney Thomas, dude, that is pushing you for snaps with the first team. It's Ronnie Harrison, who now has played 3 different positions for the Colts that he hasn't even been with for 2 years now. Okay. Those are the guys that are that you can't separate yourself from. That's awful. It's not even about Nick Cross. It's about the guys that are behind him, right on his ass for that starting position. Yes, I agree. I think the alarm needs to be rung here. Whether it's, we're not going to get into the 2 names. You just need to sign somebody. You got to sign somebody to at least push Nick Cross and make it somebody that can at least potentially secure the starting position, and secure it and at least play at a pretty good level.
Honestly, what might be the best thing to happen for the Colts is if the Colts go into this preseason game against the Denver Broncos on August 11th, and Bo Nix goes out there and just absolutely torches the side of the field that free safety is. Maybe that'll give the Colts the kick in the pants to go out there and sign Justin Simmons if he is still available at that point. We'll have to see.
Dude.
Alex Jackson is asking about Jalen Simpson. The Colts have no plans right now to play Jalen Simpson as safety. He has all the reps he has taken have been at cornerback. He has played safety before, but the Colts really see him or envision him as a cornerback. He hasn't taken any reps at safety yet, so I don't think that is in the cards really. And then finally, our final position positional battle: kick return and punt return. Drake, and I think the Colts have been using a lot of different combinations for this, as Stats Matt said earlier, asking about the 9 different punt return options that the Colts have, but for kick return, I think from what Josh Downs had an interview this week with 1070 The Fan, and or 107.5. It was with Kevin Bowen, talking about the kick return and punt return. From what he made it sound like, it seems like Dallas Flowers is the one that's leading the kickoff return battle, but Anthony Gould is the one leading the punt return battle. And I mean, that's kind of what we expected coming into training camp, especially with Anthony Gould, because Anthony Gould was an all-American punt returner at Oregon State. You'd kind of be foolish not to put him as a punt returner when he's that good at that specific job. But the Colts are still trying a bunch of different combinations at kickoff return with the new rules, and it might with also having 2 guys back there, because Dallas Flowers will probably be the primary guy to return the kickoff, but you still need, if it gets kicked the other way, you need someone to be able to return, and you also, that guy who isn't returning needs to be able to kind of be a good lead blocker. And I think that's why Alec Pierce has been kind of put out there as well. But as of right now, Dallas Flowers at kick return, Anthony Gould at punt return. Drake, what do you think about those 2 fits?
I mean, I love the fact that Anthony Gould is, as the punt returner, because he's more of the shifty type of variety. I mean, obviously he's fast as hell, but he is definitely more of that shifty variety, and I think that that's going to fit well with punt blocking. And he also just fits that role the best, in my opinion. But Dallas Flowers as the kick returner is great, because in 2022 he led the entire NFL in yards per kick return with a ridiculous 31.1 on 23 returns. This dude had over 700 yards returning. All right, and that's on a crap team. Okay,
yeah.
So yeah.
Sorry, yeah, and if Dallas Flowers isn't out there as a cornerback, you're at least getting him those snaps as a kick returner, getting that speed, that explosiveness out there. And from everything that I've seen so far in training camp, even though he did have that Achilles injury, it does not look like it has affected his speed or his explosiveness. Dallas Flowers is still out there and is still one of the fastest Colts on the entire football team. So those are the positional battles still after week 1. Obviously, we'll keep you updated as training camp and the preseason goes along all the way until we get to week 1 on those. Drake, let's talk about the injury reports, because there unfortunately is quite a bit more injuries on the report than what we were talking about just a few days ago. Obviously, Chris Lamons is still on the PUP list. He was working off to the side with a trainer, so he could be close to returning. Raekwon Davis still on the NFI list with the high blood pressure. Every day at practice, he's been off to the side on the exercise bike. So when his blood pressure does come back down to reasonable levels, he will be back out there on the field. Talked about Braden Smith. Braden Smith back to work with the 11s and with the starting unit. He did all of the 11-on-11 sessions on Wednesday, besides the last one. That's when Blake Freeland came in. So as long as everything goes well there, I would expect to see Braden Smith tomorrow when the Colts have practice, back with the 11s and back to full participation in practice. Dio Dangbo still dealing with that calf injury. He was on the exercise bike as well. Nothing, so it doesn't seem like it's too serious. Again, they're just being kind of cautious with that. Now, Titus Leo went down in practice and was kind of grabbing his knee. They did have to bring the cart out for him. But Drake, I'm not, and we haven't heard anything from Shane Steichen or from the Colts on the severity of it, like we did with Samson Ebukam about tearing his Achilles. But Titus Leo was at practice. This happened on Tuesday. At Wednesday's practice, Titus Leo was out there. He had a sleeve around his knee, but he was out there watching practice. So it wasn't like he was in a brace, like an ACL or anything like that. So still no word officially on what that knee injury is, but in my opinion, if he's out there still watching practice a day after it happened, no brace or anything like that, no cast, I think that's a good sign.
Yeah, and it could have just been like a a false scare, which is really good because he had a season-ending injury last year. I can't remember what it was. It was something really weird. What was it? Do you remember? I don't remember.
It was something with his lower extremities, and it happened again in the preseason
Yeah.
again.
Yeah, and he
So
actually was showing out at times during training camp and whatnot. So it's good that he's at least out there because I would like to see what Titus Leo has to offer. He was one of those small school guys that really hasn't even had a chance to shine at all. So.
Right. The other two injuries, Jalen Carlisle's dealing with a little bit of a hip injury. Shane Steichen didn't seem very concerned about that, holding him out for precautionary reasons. And again, and the same thing with Will Mallory with a hamstring. So, but Will Mallory in that battle with all those tight ends in that room, are the Colts going to end up keeping 5 or not? And Drake, I have you kind of gotten me onto the Will Mallory train. I really like Will Mallory. I like his skill set, his speed. I think he could be a mismatch, a really solid backup move tight end for this team. So hopefully that hamstring doesn't hamper him too much where it ends up forcing the Colts to kind of move on or at least put him on the practice squad to start the season.
Yeah, because right now, I mean, him, then Ogletree, then Woods, then Alley Cox, and then my missing set Granson. That's 5 tight ends. So the Colts are probably having a hard time figuring out who are we supposed to, let go of if we don't want to keep 5. But man, if you give them any excuse to, you could be the odd guy out. So I'm right there with you. I hope Mallory, can kind of stave that off because man, he's got a lot of potential, especially with a vertical offensive mind like Shane Steichen.
Exactly. So those are the injuries so far. Outside of Samson Ebukam, none have been too serious. So fingers crossed because this Colts team always seems to get peppered with injuries in the preseason and throughout training camp and really we don't want to see that. We want to see a healthy team going into week 1 with that huge matchup against the Houston Texans. We've got a couple of news to announce here for the Colts before we get you guys out of here to go watch the Hall of Fame game, get some preseason football that everybody has been itching to watch for a few months now.
Right.
But Drake, the Colts did make a move. They did go out and sign somebody, but it wasn't a safety. It was defensive end Levi Bell. So with Ebukam going down, with Dio Odangbo dealing with a calf injury, with Titus Leo now going down, the Colts brought in a defensive end, really a camp body, Levi Bell, who was in the correct me if I'm wrong, he was in the UFL last season with the Michigan Panthers. Drake, you're the one that wrote up the piece on horseshoehuddle.com about Bell. Tell us a little bit about the newest member of the Colts.
Yeah, so I think he was Louisiana. I don't have it in front of me now, but I think he was Louisiana Tech, Texas State. But the thing is, he played in like you said, the USFL, and then once it became the UFL, he was then, I believe, then he was still retained by Michigan because they kept their team. So, but yeah, like you said, it's a camp body, but you're really seeing what you can just put at depth now behind the guys that are going to get those promotions pretty much. Because now it's going to leave an open spot somewhere when a guy like Ebukam goes down. No matter how much you shuffle these people that you've got, that you've worked to build up, you still have to fill the back end of it. So I think that this is just seeing what you might have. And, if it works, great. If not really that big of a loss.
Yeah, really just a camp body. Probably until you can get Dio Dangbo and Titus or Titus Leo back. Just a guy to help fill some reps there at defensive end. And to make room for Levi Bell, the Colts did waive guard Lewis Kidd, who was working primarily with the third team. Not really a candidate to make the team either. So again, kind of one camp body goes out, another comes in. But we're already through 1 week of training camp, Drake, for the Indianapolis Colts. Definitely seen some bigger names standing out. Anthony Richardson, Laiatu Latu. We talked about Josh Downs on Monday, Julian Blackman standing out. And we're only through week 1. the Colts are back on the practice field bright and early tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Then they're off Saturday, and then they have 2 practices on back-to-back on Sunday and Monday. So we're getting into the thick of training camp, and the longer we go on, the more we're going to start to see the cream rise to the top, and really we're going to start to see those position battles. I think over the next week or so, those position battles are going to start to be much clearer, especially once we get to the end of next week, preparing for the Colts to have their first preseason game against the Denver Broncos, and then the week after that is when we have the joint practices with the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah, this is the busy time, man. This is when things start to really, kind of become clear as far as, like you said, those positional battles. But man, a lot of work ahead for guys like Richardson, guys like Downs. You got to keep doing what they've been. Guys like that have to keep doing what they've been doing. But then, like you said, guys like Alec Pierce need to keep off guys like A.D. Mitchell. It's just going to be exciting to see what happens in these upcoming weeks ahead of a very pivotal 2024 season.
Exactly. So that's our show for tonight, guys. Really, really appreciate everybody tuning in to talk about Colts training camp with us and get you guys all up to date on everything that's happening there at Grand Park. Want to give a special shout out to our 2 super chats this evening, Andrew and Yim. Thank you guys so much for the super chats, and everyone else that had questions tonight and joined in the conversation about the Colts and everything that's happening at training camp. And the stats, Matt, one more question. Is it padded tomorrow? Yes, I do think tomorrow's practice is padded, so that the intensity should definitely ramp up for tomorrow's practice as well. And if you guys haven't done so, please go follow us on all of our socials, like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook, follow at Colts_SI on X, and then subscribe to the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel. Hit that bell so you know when Drake and I go live every Monday and Thursday night, or if our schedule happens to change, which it actually will be on Monday. So you make sure to hit that bell so you don't miss a single episode. And if you can't catch us live, or on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you listen to podcasts, we're on there as well. So make sure you subscribe, give us a 5-star review so we can reach other Colts fans just like you. The co-deputy editor, Drake Wally, has been writing a ton and putting out a ton of content on horseshoehuddle.com. Tell the people what they need to go check out.
Yeah, so just a couple pieces that I wrote were, one was on how Rich Eisen on his show talked about Anthony Richardson. Pretty awesome breakdown. A lot of fun to watch that one. So go check that out. But then I do my 5 wild Colts predictions for 2024. They're possible, but they're pretty, I think outside of one, they're pretty ridiculous. So go check them out.
That was a fun piece to read. So definitely check that out. Myself, I've got a piece out there on Laiatu Latu and how he is fighting to really capture and secure that starting role on the outside. He really talked in depth about Samson Ebukam and how Ebukam has really been a big brother and a mentor for him even before the Colts drafted him. So Laiatu Latu being pretty vulnerable there. And I think after you're done reading it, you're just going to like the kid even more. So make sure to check that out. And guys, the final entry for the 2024 Rookie File Series comes out tomorrow. Jonah Laulu, his story is pretty crazy, pretty incredible, and that includes a 4,000-mile transfer. Pretty crazy. So Jonah Laulu will come out tomorrow morning before Colts practice. So make sure to check that out and everything else that's up there on horseshoehuddle.com. Make sure to go follow Drake at DWalster Drake. You can follow me at Andrew Moore NFL. And guys, we will be back on Tuesday night. So the reason why next Monday night, we're doing a meet and greet. So if you are out there at training camp on Monday, after Monday's practice, myself, Drake, Jake Arthur will be there. Sean Ackerman will be there. Noah Jabber will be there. We will all be live at Urban Apples Cidery. Wanted to make sure I got that name right. Urban Apples Cidery on Spring Mill Road, just outside of Grand Park Sports Complex. So, hey, Monday afternoon, Monday evening, go to Colts training camp, take in practice, then come over to Urban Apples Cidery, get a drink, get some food, and just come chat Colts with the Horseshoe Huddle crew. So if you're in the area, please stop out. We'd love to meet you. We'd love to talk Colts with you. Last year, it was a lot lot of fun. Got to see Colts fan Cole. I know a lot of you guys know him. Got to meet him for the first time. And so if you guys are in the area on Monday, please come hang out. It's going to be a lot of fun. So that means we will be back live on Tuesday night to get you all caught up from Colts training camp. So make sure you check us out and come hang Monday night. And then we'll see you right back here live on YouTube on Tuesday night. Colts fans, enjoy your weekend.